going to be a tough play. Bryant, the Cubs win the World Series. 10-5 touchdown, Kansas City. Damian Williams runs to immortality and will be remembered forever in the Chiefs' kingdom.
Welcome in to the Brawl Network podcast. Here's your host.
And welcome everybody to another live episode of the Brawl Network podcast. It is me, your producer, Jay Andrews. Hit me up on the Twitter at UPJ33. And as always, our Wednesday cast of characters, Sam Stevenson on the Twitter at SJSteve9 with your Bears. And covering the Ravens, Jacob Vogel at Real Jake Vogel on the Twitter. What's up, guys? How you doing?
What's up?
I'm great. Let's have another great show.
Oh, you guys got a lot to get to, so I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Have some fun.
Jake, you want to go first?
Sure. So today we're going to talk about the cut down to 53 men, the 53-man roster. The Ravens are in a little bit different position than they were last year. Heading into last year, they had just gotten into the playoffs with a 10-win record. Lamar lost his first playoff game during his rookie season, and then they went into the offseason. Everybody was quiet, and then the season started, and it was fireworks. The Ravens went 14-2, and now the expectations are different, and the makeup of the team is different, and the Ravens roster compared to the rest of the NFL is near the top, if not the top, completely talented. So cutting down to 53 is going to be really difficult. Making the decision of 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks is another layered decision this year because of COVID. What if one of those guys gets injured or one of those guys gets sick? Then you only have 1 quarterback on the roster, and then something can happen in the game. So it's going to be really interesting to see how teams decide going with 2 quarterbacks or 3 and how they isolate some of those guys and how this whole season unfolds. What are your thoughts on that, Sam?
So from the Windy City side of things, obviously 2019 was a bit of a disappointing season after a promising 2018 season, going 12-4, winning the NFC North, and then obviously the disaster that was the double doink. 2019 was not much better for Bears fans, finishing with a respectful 8-8 record, not great. This offseason, a lot of areas that were prioritized, I think, for the Bears. I mean, it's a whole revamped tight end room. There obviously was the big storyline with Nick Foles coming in to compete at the quarterback position. You bring up a good point with keeping quarterbacks. I think it's tough because for a team like the Bears, who their quarterback situation is not as set as the Ravens, you're kind of looking at a situation where, you know, bringing in a new guy, while it would be exciting, is a bit of a risk because, again, COVID. But yet again, if Foles or Mitch goes down, you're looking at a practice squad quarterback of Tyler Bray. No offense to Tyler Bray, but certainly isn't at the same level of either of those guys. So again, I think I definitely like your point there. It's going to be kind of tough, I think, for teams this year. Obviously, practice squad rosters are being expanded, which is great. And additionally, there's going to be those 2, I call them like bubble picks, that teams are going to be able to take 2 of their practice squad guys, put them on active roster. But again, it's a valid point. It's going to be tough making cuts this year. I think the Bears definitely brought in a lot of good young talent. Last year, I believe the team only kept 1 undrafted free agent, which, again, it's unfortunate we didn't have preseason because I really think those are the time for guys like that to shine, young players to really just kind of put themselves out there. So, I think this is going to be really tough. Obviously, we are not the GMs, so we don't have as much pressure making these picks, but definitely agree with your point. there's going to be a couple position groups that are going to be kind of sketchy when we're making cuts, just because, again, one guy goes down because of COVID. Is that whole position group down? Trying to find a sub as quickly as possible, trying to sign someone as quickly as possible. It's going to be interesting this year. It'll be interesting to see how teams handle it. Yeah, I mean, for my situation for the Bears, it's obviously a little different than the Ravens. I definitely will say the Ravens got a pretty damn fine roster over there. But, I'm excited to see who the Bears end up taking. I think there's a couple young guys who could actually make this roster. Be surprising, but, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting this year, for sure.
For sure. Something that I'd point out in my own managing the 53, I think trench work more so than in other years matters during this season because of COVID. With so many opt-outs of the big guys, the big uglies, offensive line and defensive line, those guys are going to be a premium, the ones that are still in the league and playing this year. So you might have to keep one extra offensive lineman or one extra defensive lineman than you did the previous year. I still think that the net of the roster, the composition between offense and defense will be pretty even like most years. It's usually about 25 and 25 or 24 and 26, with the other three guys, of course, being the kicker, the punter, and the long snapper. But that's just the thing I would add because of COVID.
Yeah.
That those big guys are really important.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, again, you talk about big guys opting out. I mean, Bears' biggest player that opted out this year was obviously Eddie Goldman, respectively, is a pretty key part of the guy in the trenches. While obviously he doesn't make a lot of big flashy plays, just kind of one of those key fundamental guys. So I definitely could see the Bears maybe thinking about keeping an extra defensive lineman just because, again, they lost Akeem Hicks last year. Bilal Nichols, potential young star, broke his hand. So you never know what's going to happen. And, again, I think for sure, you're going to see things like the Bears are doing when they got two kickers right now. And you can make a whole mockery of Bears and kickers. But while I do think it's kind of weird, I do kind of respect the decision. And I'll talk a little bit more about like the special teams once we do the actual roster breakdown. But, I feel like a position like that, there's going to be guys cycling in and out the entire season. I would be shocked if a lot of kickers remain tenured the entire year. Obviously, I think your Ravens are good, bearing any injuries. I think you guys are fine with Justin Tucker, but I think that'll be a position where teams are going to be swapping guys in and out. So I think for the most part, though, it's going to be those big guys in the trenches who are going to be more prone to keeping extra guys. But, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm obviously hoping for the best.
Yeah, me too. This year with the IR designation, teams are able to put a guy on active IR in week 1, and then in a week or two, they can bring that guy back up to the roster so that he can play. This is especially nice during the COVID season, but it also would be nice to have, from now on, every year. With that being said, there's some guys that are getting banged up in training camp, and they might have a week-to-week injury, and a team is put in the tough position of either IRing that player now and not having them for the whole year, or having to make an end-of-the-roster cut to get to 53 men, keeping that injured guy on that initial list and then IRing him so that he can come back in a couple weeks.
And I think what we're going to see a lot of is a lot of soft tissue injuries with the lack of kind of OTAs, obviously the lack of preseason games, and really generally just a shorter training camp. I think a lot more guys are going to get injured just like, being explosive, being athletes. I think you're definitely going to have your guys who get their injuries because they get banged up or whatever. But I think for the most part, and I've had a couple of discussions with some of my siblings and stuff, but I think we're going to see a lot more guys get kind of these softer injuries in terms of like softer tissue and stuff. I mean, we saw it with David Montgomery. He was just taking a cut in practice, pulled his groin, is out for a couple of weeks. So I think that is going to be a common theme this year because of COVID. So I like that move with the IR. It'll be interesting to see how teams utilize it. I definitely agree it makes cutting down the roster much more difficult, but I'm curious to see how that kind of shapes up with teams as rosters start slimming out the rest of this week.
Yeah, for sure. We actually have some breaking news right now.
Uh-oh.
And it's not one that I'm just falling for. This is a verified source. Adam Schefter is saying that Leonard Fournette is signing with the Buccaneers. I know he was a Bears hopeful at running back. What are your thoughts?
Here's the thing. As interesting as it might have been to bring Fournette in and bring kind of that 1-2 punch, I don't think the Bears were ever truly in the running for it. Fournette's got some issues off the field, and I obviously think a lot of people aren't super high on him. I know a lot of Bears fans really wanted him. It seems every time there's a good free agent running back and there's available, Bears want him. I obviously wrote an article mostly just because I knew it was going to get a lot of views. For me personally, and Matt Nagy addressed this today, they feel comfortable with the running back depth. Whether or not people agree with that is up to them, but I'm going to trust at this point that they feel set with the guys they have. This makes me think that Montgomery's going to be back ready for week 1. And, there's a couple – obviously we're going to see what happens with the Cordell Patterson experiment, but, for the most part, the Bears weren't really a run-first team last year, and obviously I think that plagued their team a little bit. However, I think a key part of that was the offensive line, just kind of a lack of movement up there. So I think, to be honest, as cool as it would have been to get Fournette, I don't ever think the Bears were truly in contention for him.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he'll be a nice addition to the Buccaneers. They got a weak running back room, and again, it'll be another weapon for Brady. But who knows? I think the only really connection Fournette had was to the Bears quarterback coach. I'm going to butcher his name, John DeCastillo, I believe is how you say it. I'm pretty sure DeFlippio.
Yeah.
I definitely butchered that. He was the Jaguars offensive coordinator last year, really helped Fournette kind of break out in terms of being more of a passing threat. But again, I never really thought it was going to truly be in contention. But hey, that article on the Brawl Network, if you guys haven't read it, got a lot of views, so can't be upset about that.
So does Fournette automatically become a top fantasy running back now down there with the Tampa Bays?
Yeah, I was about to get into that too. That has to affect Ronald Jones' draft stock for anybody that hasn't drafted yet.
Has to be. His value has to go up. You're assuming he's signing there to be the lead back. And I think that was one of the reasons why he was never going to really come to Chicago, is because the team believes in David Montgomery. So even if he was just kind of a rental, I don't think he would have been willing to split reps. I don't think the team was really even considering bringing a guy to split reps. So I think he's going to definitely be their lead back. Has to be, right?
I don't know that he really has that much power in the conversation for him to go there and say, I'm not signing here unless I'm the lead back. The Jaguars couldn't get any draft capital for him. So
yeah, true. I guess I just mean more like, I'm not a Ronald Jones hater by any means, but I just feel like you go into a situation there where their running back situation isn't great, and whether or not he's signing there just to sign there because of their team that are interested in them, I just feel like he is going to get a lot more reps than he would be in like a Chicago or even like a New England or something like that. But yeah, it's definitely a good point. He doesn't really have a lot of power in the conversation. He's definitely hoping for a bounce back year. But I feel like definitely impacts their kind of situation there. Good for their offense, though.
What you got, Jay?
I got Fournette in my other ESPN fantasy league, and somebody tried to trade for him today, and I was like, I'm not trading him when I don't know what team he's going to yet. I'm gonna ride him on the bench. Like, I know in our league. Now, it's probably because he had like 18,000 running backs because of auto draft, but Lagasse cut him yesterday, like as soon as the news came out. And now I'm sure he's kicking himself in the ass because he's now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
That was so frustrating to watch. Just all those running backs and wide receivers get taken. I was getting so mad.
Yeah, the auto-drafted team didn't get a quarterback until like the last round. It's a fine strategy, I suppose. Going quarterback late is a trendy move in fantasy football, so that's something. I don't think they had a tight end until late too.
Oh, Jesus. We're going to get into that discussion here. I do have Kittle and Kelsey. And by the way, how smart does my handcuff of Murray look now?
I was going to say, I wanted to talk to you about that because, man, that was smart. My brother had Kamara. He took fourth overall. He was texting me. He's like, dude, I'm freaking out right now. I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, literally giving me live text as all those stories were coming out. He's like, he's like, Kamara's gonna get traded. Murray's already been taken. I don't know who to play. Like, no, he's got a couple of good rookies on his bench, to be fair. But I was laughing because I told him to take Dalvin, but Dalvin Cook's kind of going through the same situation with the Vikings right now. It's tough to have this overall pick in fantasy right now.
There's also the talk about him getting an extension, though. It's really weird how teams will say one thing and then you get news of another thing. So you never know.
Would you give Kamara the money he's asking?
No, but that's a philosophy. You don't pay running backs big contracts, especially guys that get banged up. But just in general, draft them, rinse, repeat.
Draft them, rinse, repeat.
Or undrafted. Honestly.
All right. I mean, I've got anything else if we want to start getting into these rosters.
Go ahead.
Do you want to go? So this is my question. You want to go like you'll say a position, I'll say the same position, or you want to go through like your whole offense and then I'll go offense? How do you want to do this?
Let's just do by position.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's do Ravens offensive line. So,
did you literally just now pick up Leonard Fournette, you slick son of a B?
Who did that?
Sure did.
How did that not?
Oh my gosh!
You bastard! I was trying to do it while you were talking, and I did it, and it's like one of the players being added. It already exists, and I check, and it's this slick asshole over here on the other side. Like, no.
That's why he wanted me to go first.
Slow. Yeah, that's exactly what him and I were doing the exact same thing, but my phone is being slow and stupid.
I look and Jay's on his phone and I'm like, oh man, I wonder if he's going to pick up Fournette. So I went into the league and I saw it just said add, and I looked and I had Justin Jackson who was questionable. I'm like, yeah, I'll drop Justin Jackson. And it said, all right, Leonard Fournette added to your team. I'm like, that was easy.
How do we not have fab and stuff in this? Like, we should have been able to bid for this. I have got a bone to pick with our commissioner. Kyle, we got some issues, man. Friday night, we're going to have it out. You can't just be letting people just pick people up for nothing, just the first one to it. My phone is slow. I'm in the UP. It's like 30 years behind in the internet. I'm lucky I can even do these shows up here with the way the internet is. Not fair. Hogwash. Steve, you're going to pay for this for the rest of the season. I'm telling you right now. There was a bad choice on your part to undercut me while you knew clearly what I was doing. Got it out for you now. Jake, you're my new favorite guy on this show.
By default. I appreciate it.
By default.
All right. So to get into the offensive line, you got Ronnie Stanley at left tackle. He's a lock. Orlando Brown Jr. at right tackle. He's also a lock. Matt Skura, who's had some amazing rehab so far and is way ahead of schedule based on his horrific knee injury last year. He is slotted in to make the 53, and I think the team will IR him for a couple weeks or however long it takes and then bring him back. But for the initial 53, I have Skura on there. He's the Ravens center. You also have Patrick McCarry, who came in and played pretty well behind Skura after he went down last year. He's a lock to make the team as well. He can really play all three spots, and he was a tackle in college, but he has really short arms. So he fits a lot better inside. Then you got a bunch of guys vying for those two guard spots. and the backup positions. You got Tyree Phillips, who was a rookie this year. You got Ben Powers, who was a rookie last year, and he played really well in Week 17 against the Steelers when it was the Ravens' backup offense against Pittsburgh's first team, awesome defense last year. And you also have DJ Fluker, who is in the best shape of his life. I know you hear those stories all the time around training camp, but it's legit. He was at like 40-some% body fat, and now he's at like 22, which is really good for him. He's just a huge guy. You also have Ben Bredesen out of Michigan, who's a rookie this year. So they're not going to cut Bredesen, and they're not going to cut Phillips.
Any guys in that group that you are particularly high on, or like any sleepers in that group?
Out of this group, I really like Phillips. He's shown a ton from everything I've seen training camp wise. I think next year or even later this year he could be a starter. He kind of reminds me of Kelechi Osemele, who was a really good guard in Baltimore. He ended up going to play for Oakland and got a huge contract. Didn't play out the whole contract. Ended up in New York last year with the Jets. So he is very promising to me. Other than that, it's kind of a bunch of unknowns. DJ Fluker does look the part for now. I think he's slotted in to start at right guard. You also have somebody that I haven't mentioned yet, Bradley Bozeman, who played left guard, I think, the entire year last year and really solidified his spot in the Seattle game. Other than that, it's kind of a crapshoot. There's been some debate on if we even keep Ben Powers, who was a fourth-round player last year, in place of, let me find the guy, a guy that has some swing tackle versatility, because the Ravens don't like to, on game day, not have a guy that can just plug in if there was an injury. They'd rather just do one position for a position instead of change two positions on the line. I think his name was like, hold on. Is even Holden? Was it Will Holden? 1 second, I'll get to you on that.
No, you're good. I was going to say you're going to know, and I'm not. So.
Yeah, Will Holden.
Oh, yeah, don't worry. He's just delaying because he's over here doing more sneaky free agent pickups on our freaking draft league. That's what's going on.
Hey,
I didn't catch it.
I'll check Twitter when you have a chance.
Oh, no. He's listed as a guard, but Will Holden is the guy that has that tackle flexibility. So he could actually kick out a potentially more promising player in Ben Powers. I think the Ravens will keep 8 guys active on game day and probably carry 9 on the roster. So you have your starting 5, and then you have to have a backup center, somebody that's good at snapping the ball. You have to have a backup guard that can play either guard spot and a guy that can play either tackle spot. So I think Holden might end up being the sleeper pick to make the offensive line for me.
Very nice. Anything else, or is it my turn?
That's it for offensive line.
All right, so for the Bears offensive line, I have them keeping 8 guys, and I believe they'll definitely keep one in one of those bubble spots. Most of these guys are going to be familiar names for Bears fans. There'll be a couple of newer guys, and then I'll kind of break down sort of the key changes. But really, the Bears didn't make a lot of groundbreaking moves. Really thought they were going to go after a guy like Larry Warford or something like that, but they believe in their offensive line coach, and they believe in this group. So this is the group that we got at this point. So from across, and I'm just going to list the guys, and then I'll kind of explain the key ones. Charles Leno Jr., tackle, and then on the opposite side of him will be Bobby Massey, James Daniel, Cody Whitehair, and then newcomer Jermaine Ifedi. And then some key rotational guys will be Jason Spriggs, Rashad Coward, and Alex Bars. And then I believe if they're to bring up one on that bubble, they'll probably take 7th-round pick, and I'm going to definitely butcher his first name, Lachavious Simmons. So the biggest signing here is Ifedi from the Seahawks, who he's received a lot of criticism. He wasn't great. They believe the switch to guard is going to be a key to his development on this offensive line, which he was pretty okay at guard for the Seahawks. But, man, watching his film at tackle makes me a little nervous. The thing that's nice is Daniels and Whitehair both play center, so they've interchanged before. So if one of those guys goes down at center, those two guys can swap. Spriggs is a guy from the Packers. He's our swing tackle in this case. The guy that I'm really high on and the guy I'm hoping can kind of put things together is second-year Alex Bars. Bars was an undrafted rookie the Bears picked up last year who actually got a contract offer for active roster to the Patriots. Decided to stick around with the Bears because he liked the culture and he liked what the Bears had going. Bears actually ended up signing him, I believe, to the active roster towards the end of the season. He's one of those guys who I think can switch around between guard and tackle. I really like his game, and I'm hoping he can find his way onto the field, even if it's just as a rotational guy. Again, this offensive line, for the most part, is pretty much similar, and it's probably going to be one of the biggest question marks going into the season. Can this offensive line get things moving? Can they help us establish the run game? Can they give whoever the hell starts at quarterback some time? I think a lot of the criticism from last year's fluky season was definitely on Mitch Trubisky, but I also think that the offensive line received a lot of heat as well. But this is an offensive line group that was pretty solid in 2018 for the most part. Obviously, the loss of Kyle Long was pretty dramatic to the team, and he was a key leader. So I'm really hoping that this group can figure it out. But those are my 8 that I believe the Bears.
Very solid. Yeah, it seems like offensive line is an area that both the Ravens and the Bears have the most uncertainty with, or some of the most uncertainty on the team. So
absolutely, you want to go tight ends? Speaking of big boys,
sure, we can go tight ends. I have inside linebackers ready. Tight ends are off the dome. I got it.
Up to you, Jake. I have both ready to go.
Okay. So for tight end, you got Mark Andrews, who is a lock. He is basically wide receiver number 2 in Baltimore. Last year he was number 1 with Hollywood being so injured. He's split out a ton, plays a ton from the slot, so he's essentially a big wide receiver out there. Then you got Nick Boyle, who is renowned as one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. I know George Kittle is also known for being a really good blocker, and you see those games under the lights, and he really shows up in that area. But Boyle has graded out better than any other tight end in blocking. He could be an offensive lineman out there legitimately. He grades better than a lot of the offensive linemen in the NFL. Then you got tight end 3, which is a really tricky position in Baltimore. We had Hayden Hurst, who was a first-round pick number 25, before Lamar Jackson. As you all should know, he got traded to the Atlanta Falcons for a second-round pick, and we're pretty happy about it, but now we have question marks at tight end 3. So it's kind of between some young guys and an older guy, and I really feel like the answer is not even on the team yet. I think it could be Delaney Walker. It could be somebody that's going to be cut still, but the options are Eli Wolf, a tight end out of Georgia, who's probably about 240, 245, decent height, and is a good move tight end. He'd be a nice receiving threat. He is currently banged up, though. You got Charles Scarf, who was an undrafted player, but has been with the Ravens for a year or two now, just on the practice squad. And the last guy is a vet, but hasn't played much, Jarrell Adams. He used to play for the Giants. So, but the last offensive snaps he had were in 2017, I believe. So, tight end 3 in Baltimore seems to be a position that will grab somebody on the outside.
Interesting. So for my 53-man roster, the first two guys, pretty obvious, Jimmy Graham, Cole Kmet. I think there's been enough said past few episodes about them that I don't really need to explain that as well. Coming in at tight end 3 will likely be Demetrius Harris, a guy who's played both Kansas City and Cleveland. He's got some connections to Matt Nagy. Good. He's got a big body. He's going to be good depth. JP Holtz will likely fit into that 4th spot. He kind of played a mix of both tight end and fullback, so I think he's going to be a nice piece to the run game. And then my 5th guy is Jesper Horsted. This is my guy. I am a fan of Horsted. He's an undrafted wide receiver from Princeton last year. Switched to tight end. Ended up making it to the active roster due to injuries. Obviously, there's a lot of development and a lot to go, and I don't even know if he'll be activated during game day. But the kid's a good receiver, and he's a decent route runner. There's a lot of potential there, and I think the Bears, I think it's a tough position because you let it go of a guy who potentially could be tight end 3 in the near future. Young guy with a lot of potential, but that's my group of 5. I feel a lot better about this group than I did about 2019's group, but nothing really else on those guys.
I think Jake stepped away somewhere. His mic is muted. So let's. Oh,
I'm right here.
There he is.
Sorry.
There he is.
I said let's go to wide receiver. We can finish off the offense and move to the defense real quick.
Yeah, let's run it.
All right. Wide receivers, Hollywood Brown.
Yep.
This year should be big for Hollywood, breaking out after having a screw in his foot all of last year. Number 2, wide receiver, Miles Boykin or Willie Snead. Snead's more of the slot guy. Boykin's
so, Jake, what you're saying is that Hollywood Brown's rookie season was screwed?
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a nice dad joke there.
Yep.
I'm here all week, thanks. Literally.
Yeah, true.
Number 2 and number 3 are Boykin and Snead.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 is Devin Duvernay, and number 5 is James Prochet. I think the Ravens only carry 5 wide receivers this year. I think 4 and 5, Duvernay and Prochet respectively, can help out on special teams. Prochet is already slated to be the starting punt returner and possibly the kick returner. So it's a solid group.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see that group. I got the Bears keeping 6 this year, and there's a reason for it because I believe a couple of these guys are going to be in a red shirt sort of situation. Wide receiver 1, Allen Robinson. That one's obvious. Anthony Miller, hoping for a big year this year. Kid's definitely got potential, so I'm really excited for that. Then you bring in the veteran, Ted Ginn Jr., and then the next 3 guys are all young guys that I think have a lot of potential. Darnell Mooney, 5th-round pick for the Bears this year out of Tulane. Then you got Riley Ridley, 2nd-year receiver from Georgia. And then I think the team is also going to keep Javon Wims, a 7th-round pick from a couple years back. I see a lot of potential in these guys. Wims had a great preseason, but never really truly figured it out during the season, really couldn't step up when needed to. But the guy's got a lot of potential, and he's a big body as well. I'm really excited to see if Riley Ridley can find his way into kind of the active roster. If he's anything like his brother, I think he's going to be an exciting weapon. The thing is that Ridley kind of took a redshirt year, and I think that's what's going to probably happen to Darnell Mooney. The Bears do have a tendency to kind of keep a guy in the active roster at receiver, but never really bring him up to the active roster at all. What I will say is that Mooney's been pretty awesome in practice. A lot of really positive reports coming out. And so I just think while he's a smaller guy, he has a lot of potential on special teams, specifically returning kicks. So I'm hoping that we can see a little bit of action out of him this season. But to be honest, I think this is a group that is pretty solid and has a lot of potential. We just got to get production from somebody whose name isn't Allen Robinson. I mean, this group's got to, and again, a lot of that rides on the quarterback situation. But I'm really hoping that this group can figure things out and really be a good in terms of depth and just threats on the field. But that's my group. I got the Bears keeping 6.
Solid. I like those Georgia guys.
Yeah.
For the listeners, I am a UGA fan. I live in Athens, Georgia. How am I a Ravens fan? I used to live in Baltimore. So there you go.
There you go. To the running backs.
To the running backs. Do you want to do it? Snake draft?
Yeah, let's do it. So I got the Bears keeping 4. For my starter, obviously David Montgomery. We've talked enough about Montgomery as is. Cohen kind of sliding in, not necessarily at RB2, but we all kind of know Cohen's one of those Swiss Army knife guys. I believe the Bears are going to keep Cordell Patterson. What's up?
You're good.
Okay. I was like, did I say something wrong? I believe they're going to keep him listed as a running back. Whether or not they use him more at a running back or wide receiver is up to them. And then as my 4th guy, I got undrafted rookie Artavius Pierce. Pierce is a really fun, interesting player out of Oregon State. And to be honest, I think he's got more upside than his former or his fellow teammate from Oregon State, Ryan Nall. I would rather the Bears keep a young guy like him, even if he doesn't get a lot of reps. I see a lot of potential in his game. And I think, considering that Montgomery's iffy with that injury, Cohen, as much as I love him, he's not a big workhorse kind of guy. And I don't know what they're going to do with Patterson. So I would rather they keep a guy like Pierce, who has a lot of upside and a lot of potential. But yeah, those are my 4. I'm really hoping the run game can get established this year, though.
Sounds good.
To you, Jacob.
So our running backs are Mark Ingram, J.K. Dobbins, the rookie out of Ohio State, Justice Hill, and Gus Edwards. I think the Ravens keep all 4 of those guys, as well as the Pro Bowl fullback, Patrick Ricard. A lot of times on the 53, they're listed as running back, so it'll be 5 if you label him as a running back. Last year, he was a versatile piece to this whole team, and the year prior, he was as well. Last year, he really broke out as one of the best fullbacks in the NFL. So I think they're going all 4 of those guys. Lamar gets a little bit less carries, especially designed runs. I imagine will be a little bit less this year for him with all of the running backs they have at their disposal.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can crank out quarterbacks pretty quickly here and then move on to the defense.
Yep. All right, I'll go real fast. Lamar Jackson, RG3.
Yeah, I think that's a good 1-2 punch right there. I mean, mine is obvious as well. Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles. Hopefully we get a starter named soon, but I think those are going to be the 2 guys. I mean, there's really nothing else to say. We've talked enough about quarterbacks, but pretty obvious, I think.
Yes, sir.
All right, to the defense.
You want to do back end or front?
Let's start with the front. Let's start with the trench guys.
All right. Brandon Williams at nose tackle. Calais Campbell at D end. Justin Ellis as backup D-line. He really can give Brandon Williams a breather every now and then at nose. You also have Justin Matabike, the rookie, who's looked really promising at camp. Somebody in Ravens media said he looks like Aaron Donald, which is the biggest mistake to ever say anybody looks like Aaron Donald.
That's a problem.
Let's see. You got the outside backers that are part of the D-line. Jalen Ferguson, this is his 2nd year. You got Matt Judon, who is our franchise player. Lamar is really the franchise player, but he's on the franchise tag. Mm-hmm. Pernell McPhee, Jihad Ward, and Tyus Bowser. Those guys round up the outside linebacker room. And I know I'm leaving out a D lineman that I'm trying to think of real fast. Broderick Washington was another rookie this year. So I either think he gets placed on IR or they just roll with him all year as a backup.
Nice. Jay, you look like you're pouting right now.
I'm not pouting. What? I'm just listening intensely to you guys. And I got a little like producer stuff going on in the background. I'm just, just doing my thing and listening to you guys, that's all.
The big name that I was missing is the one-man wolf pack Derek Wolfe, another free agent acquisition for the Ravens. He's going to be huge up front. So that's the D line.
How many guys did you just name? You do D-line and outside backers?
Well, per
Yeah.
usual, we all know that Jacob likes to get lists of 3 or 5 and name 1,222 players to fill those 3 to 5 slots. So it's
You're not
right
wrong.
in his it's right in his his normal per usual. It's his
All right,
wheelhouse.
I just want to make sure I name enough guys. Okay, so D-line, outside backers. All right. So unless you got anything else to say about that group.
No, that's it.
All right, so I think with I'll start with D-line, then I'll go to edge guys. I think with Eddie Goldman opting out, I think the Bears are going to keep a 6th defensive lineman this year, and especially since there's a couple injuries to that group last year, I definitely think the team's going to be more inclined to keep another body. And again, we've talked about the COVID reasons. I got Akeem Hicks, Belai Nichols, and Roy Robertson Harris. And then for some depth, I got John Jenkins, who I believe was a former Bear. I believe he was playing some time in Miami. Brent Urban, I think he was a Raven, if I'm...
He certainly was. The Canadian guy.
Yes, okay, I remember that correctly. And then...
Big hockey guy. Jay would like that.
Oh, yeah. And then Abdullah Anderson kind of rounds out that group. Again, I think they're going to keep 6 here just because of COVID reasoning. And, again, with Goldman out, you want to make sure you have enough depth there. Not really much else to say. I'm really hoping that Nichols can kind of figure it out this year. He's got a lot of potential. I don't think he's lived up to it yet. And then the guy I really like out of this position group before I move on is Robertson Harris. I'm really excited to see what he can do with starting. The guy's just been an absolute animal ever since he switched from linebacker to defensive line. I mean, he's just been a lot of fun to watch. He's got one of the best celebrations in the league, too. So he's a lot of fun, and I'm really hoping and praying that he does a lot this year. For my edge rushers, I think the first 2 guys are obvious, Khalil Mack and Robert Quinn. The depth here is a little concerning, and I'll talk a little bit about that before we move on. But I got them keeping Barkevius Mingo, and not just because of the name, Trevis Gibson, a rookie, and then Isaiah Irving. What concerns me a little bit is just Mack and Quinn are going to be great, but I'm worried about just the rotation of them out. Can those guys kind of sub in nicely? Irving just hasn't really proven that 3rd spot is his. I think Mingo's going to be more of a special teams guy. The guy I really like is Trevis Gibson, and I think I've talked about him on this podcast before. He's a rookie that the Bears actually traded up for in the 5th round. One of the best athletes from the draft in terms of just raw strength and power. Definitely needs a lot of work on his technique. But you just watch his film and you think this guy's got a lot of potential. And I think if he can kind of figure things out and get himself into key situational stuff, he can be a really nice 3rd kind of edge guy for the Bears. So I'm really excited to watch him. He's one of my underrated kind of both rookies and underrated guys on this roster. So, again, I don't love the depth here, but I think with that Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn thing, if they can get the edge rush going early, it won't matter about the depth. But those are my kind of front 7-ish group. But I don't really got nothing else to say about that.
It's a really solid group,
Yeah.
especially those edge guys.
I'm so excited to watch this pass rush. It's going to be fun. Inside linebackers?
Let's do it.
All right. Snaking back to me. We still doing snake?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So this is another group that I'm actually even more concerned about. So I got Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, and then if I could pronounce his name right, this would be great, but I'm not going to. Joel, I'm just going to call him Iggy. I don't know how to say his last name. I can't say his last name to save my life. Ewig. Yeah, no, I'm not even going to try. If you want to try it, Jake, you can go ahead, but I'm not even going to bother. I can't pronounce his name. And then Josh Woods. The guys behind Smith and Trevathan have a lot of speed, but neither guy have really proven to be a solid backup. I think a lot of things is that last year both Smith and Trevathan went down with season-end injuries, and you obviously had 2 guys who kind of stepped in, and Pierre Louis, who went to the Washington football team, and Nick Kwiatkowski, who signed with the Raiders. So the depth behind Smith and Trevathan is a little alarming in my opinion. They have an intriguing guy who's an undrafted rookie in Rashad Smith. I believe he'll probably make the practice squad, but I liked what I've seen out of reports from camp about him. But, I mean, Smith, I think this is his year to finally get that Pro Bowl, and Trevathan's just been kind of a key leader for this defense for a while. But this is definitely my position group that I think a lot of people are overlooking. this is a group that if one of those guys goes down, it could be a disaster in the middle. But I like the two guys who are starting, hoping that Woods and Iggy, as I'm going to call him, can bring in some nice special team stuff, and hopefully one of those guys can kind of figure it out this year as the third key guy. But that's a group I have some concerns with for sure.
Yeah, I get that. Behind the top two guys, there's some question marks.
Absolutely.
For the Ravens, it's pretty clear cut and dry. 4 inside linebackers will be kept. Patrick Queen, first-round pick out of LSU.
Absolutely.
Speed is all you need to know. Malik Harrison, third-round pick out of Ohio State. He's a thumper, but don't underestimate this guy in coverage. He is going to be a good player. Give him a little bit of time. LJ Fort, who the Ravens signed to an extension last year after they brought him in off the street, essentially. He is going to be linebacker 2 to 3, just depends on how fast Harrison develops. And then Chris Board rounds out the room. He is one of those guys that every year in the preseason shows up and you think, oh my gosh, we might have another undrafted linebacker that could start. And this year, without a preseason, all we hear is good things from training camp. So he's a good special teams guy for us. And last year, he almost had his shot at starting, but due to injury and some other things, he ended up not panning out there. So that's the top 4 group. Then we can move to corners.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Marlon Humphrey, All-Pro. Marcus Peters, All-Pro, borderline. Jimmy Smith used to be lockdown, and he looks really healthy right now. Tavon Young, an elite slot corner. Last year he was banged up, so still a lot of people outside of Ravens fandom don't know that much about Tavon, but he's a great nickel corner. And Anthony Averett will be the 5th corner.
Nice. So I'm keeping 6 here. Kyle Fuller, All-Pro. Buster Scrine, he's fine. Oh, that rhymed. I didn't mean to do that. No. And then obviously rookie Jalen Johnson. We got Kevin Tolliver, Sherrick McManus, and then rounding up that group is rookie Kendall Vilder. So obviously we're not totally sure who's starting that quarterback too. A lot of people are rooting for Jalen Johnson. I mean, personally, I'm hoping that he can figure it out. I think he's going to be a nice rookie addition to that defense. If not, I actually like Tolliver. He's not bad. I think he could kind of definitely step into that starting role until Johnson was ready. McManus, I feel like, has been on the team since I've been alive. He's just been an awesome special teams guy, and he's stepped up big in some games. I like Vilder a lot. I was a little confused when the Bears took him at first, considering some of the position needs we needed. But the kid's got some fight in him. He's aggressive, and I'm hoping he can kind of compete for that nickel job behind Buster Scrine, who, again, can start at outside or inside corner. But I feel pretty good about this group, but those are my 6.
Solid.
All righty, to the safeties.
Safeties.
All right, so first one is obvious, Eddie Jackson. One of the best safeties in the league by far. Personally, right now, probably one of my favorite players. And then after that, we got Tayshaun Gibson, Deion Bush, and DeAndre Houston Carson. Houston Carson will fill in that special teams job. I really like what I'm hearing out of camp that Bush is actually competing for that starting job, and he is currently over Gibson. Gibson's a pretty solid vet. Good addition from the Jaguars. I believe he was there for signing here. It might have been Houston, too. I'm not sure. But I really hope that Bush can kind of find a way to beat him out. I see a lot of potential in Bush. But either way, I feel comfortable with either of those guys starting at strong safety, letting Eddie Jackson roam freely. Hopefully he can get some more interceptions this year. But I feel really good about this group.
Really nice. That rounds out your defense. I just got to do safeties, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Chuck Clark is not necessarily the heir apparent because he plays a different safety position than Earl Thomas did. But he is the leader in the clubhouse. He is the guy that everyone on the Ravens defense goes to when they don't know a call, when they don't know their assignment. Chuck has it all. Deshaun Elliott is the guy that's moving up into the quasi free safety, split safety role that Earl Thomas is leaving or left. He's a pretty rangy player, has shown up really well in training camp, and the whole team likes him. He's been around for a couple years, has just been banged up. So injury is a severe question mark with him. The next guy would be the 7th-round rookie, Geno Stone. He looked really good at Iowa and seems like he could get some early snaps this season. The Ravens like to play a lot of dime and quarter defense, so he should get out there. You also have co-cap Anthony Levine, who is a special teams ace and an awesome dime backer. Anytime you need a coverage snap from a dime backer, Anthony Levine is the guy to go to. So I think I'm just going with those 4. An honorable mention would be Nigel Warrior, who is another undrafted player. Don't know if he makes the roster or if he makes practice squad, but he's an interesting name to watch out for.
That sounds good. I was going to say one quick thing before I get to special teams, guys. One thing to note is that the Bears do have Marquis Christian from the Rams. He is currently serving a 2-week suspension. Whether or not he ends up making the team over one of these, like a guy like Houston Carson or not, remains to be seen. But he's one of those guys that is kind of one of those hybrid positions. He can kind of play all over the place. It'll be interesting to see if he ends up making the active roster or not once his suspension is over. But that was another guy I wanted to mention real quickly who is serving a suspension, but obviously isn't going to beat out any of the other 4 guys. To the special teams, I think this will be quick.
Yeah. You want to go ahead, or you want me to just say Wolfpack?
Yeah, I was going to say yours is quick.
Yeah, Justin Tucker, kicker. Sam Cook, the punter. He's the longest tenured Raven right now. And our long snapper, Morgan Cox.
Yeah, that's pretty obvious. For me, it's going to be actually a different kicker. It's going to be Carlos Santos and then Patrick O'Donnell and Patrick Scales.
Double doink!
Yeah. The only reason I don't have Eddie Pinero here is he's still dealing with a groin injury. If this was any other position, I wouldn't be that worried, but the groin's kind of a key muscle group for kickers. I like Pinero a lot. I think he has a lot of potential. I mean, I still remember my heart rate beating out of my chest when I was watching that Denver game last year and he had the game-winning kick. But I think they're going to go with Santos for now, keep Pinero on the practice squad. Once he's healthy, maybe switch him out. Which sucks because, again, I'm really rooting for him that he can kind of, be the Bears' long-term solution to kicker. I just don't see it happening. They're going to go with Santos probably. He's a vet. He's been on the Bears before. Not saying he's the best option, but he's serviceable.
For sure.
All righty. Any final thoughts? We want to talk about key games.
Let's save the key games for next week. But we can do some fantasy talk and then end this thing.
All right, let's do it. Love it.
Did somebody say fantasy?
Sure did.
Other than the fact that my new flexer starting running back was just completely like I just got New York mugged live on air tonight. I'm gonna get you back.
You know what? I actually got a pretty good running back group, and I honestly didn't even almost need Fournette, but I saw you flip through your phone. I said, hey, I'll pick him up, stash him on my bench. If he can end up playing like he has played before, I got a solid 1, 2, 3 there.
Yeah.
You're lucky Skype doesn't allow molecular deconstruction, or I would freaking reach through the internet and choke the crap out of you right now. You're smiling doesn't make it any better.
Jay, if I can do anything to annoy you during these shows by any means, I will 100% do it, no hesitation, because it's fun.
Bears troll.
Absolutely.
Troll. The Bears still suck. Doesn't matter if you got Fournette from underneath me or not. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, Steve. It's all fun. It's okay.
Oh, I know. And I'm excited. Who knows? I think the NFC North is one of those divisions where it's a toss-up unless you're the Lions. So
we can agree on that.
Absolutely. Jake, you got any guys on your fantasy team that you think are going to be kind of one of those underrated guys?
My team's so good that I don't know if you can call any of my players underrated.
Okay.
Gosh. Cam Akers, if you want to go with the rookie. I think he's going to be really solid. I am afraid to play him week 1. I like to see how those guys pan out.
I got
Also, Justin Jefferson. I'm hearing some mixed words about him via Vikings training camp stuff, but he seems to be the number 2 option. It's him and Thielen, and then you got Dalvin Cook and Kyle Rudolph. But I imagine Jefferson will have some room to eat this year as long as he's catching the ball and getting separation.
Jay, let me ask you, what do you think about Jefferson?
I've said it 1,000 times. I do not believe in a majority. And the only reason I have CeeDee Lamb is because I know Mike McCarthy's offense, and he loves 4 and 5 receiver sets. There's 3 other starting wide receivers there already. He doesn't need to be that good to be wide open and just get yarded. You know what I mean? Like, he can be like average or even a little below average. He's still going to be open like all the time. So it's like he's like the rest of these guys were drafted and they're going into a situation where they're going to be dependent on to be number ones, and they're going to fail miserably because of the COVID situation. It's going to be like all these people that are hyped, and I just went through this on TTB with Brandon Jackson. We had Good Morning Football's producer Matt Hamilton on, and we were talking about receivers, and he even agreed that there is no premier complete receiver in this entire draft class. There is no Megatron, there is no OBJ, there is no Julio Jones. There's none of these guys are that type of talent, even though they're all talked about and touted. So if you don't have that type of talent and then you don't have an offseason the way a normal rookie does, unless you're on like a team like CeeDee Lamb is, where you're not the first, second, or third out and there's really no pressure, I don't see how they're going to live up to the hype that everybody's still talking about them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw a lot of pre-draft hype around him. I think a lot of Vikings fans were very excited when he came in and they thought he was going to be the replacement for Stephon Diggs. I mean, there's no way to tell if he's going to be amazing until he actually plays. And the reality is, again, we talked about it so many times, but no preseason, like all we get is training camp reports. Obviously, for the most part, training camp reports are going to be freaking positive. That's the idea, is that reporters are trying to display these kind of, like these players are looking good and stuff. There's no way to tell until they actually play. So it'll be interesting to see what he does week 1. I believe are the Packers at Minnesota, or are they coming?
Yeah,
to you
they're
guys?
at Minnesota, and let's put it like this. Adam Thielen is not good enough to have to, he's not, there is no number 1 legitimate wide receiver that the Packers look at and say, we have to mirror him with Jair Alexander. We can't put anybody else on him. So what's going to happen right away is, what are they going to do? They're going to put Kevin King or whoever else, their nickel or fourth guy, over on Adam Thielen, all right? And if they have to, they'll bracket cover him. And they're going to put Jair Alexander on him, and he'll do bupkis. If he gets 30 yards and actually catches the ball 4 or 5 times, I'll be surprised. He's just going to be ineffective. The matchup he has to go in week 1 and the expectations on him is just setting him up to be a massive failure, and everybody just to be coming out of week 1 going, oh my God, and Packer Nation going, yeah, see, this is exactly why we didn't need a wide receiver in the first round when you don't have a Megatron, Julio Jones, OBJ, Nuke Hopkins guaranteed out of this draft class. You're overhyping them. You got fast guys. You got route run. Jefferson's a route runner. He's not overly fast. Well, what is Jair great at? Sticking to his man coverage and press. And he's a lot faster than him, so he's never going to outrun him. He's not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to scheme him open by running crossing routes because he's not fast enough. Yeah. He may be okay in the long term because of that offense and how it operates, but it's going to be ugly week 1 in his debut in the NFL.
That's fair. I'm glad. I don't know.
I thought he was pretty good at LSU, but to me it was like Chase is such a better player. It kind of reminded me of Odell Beckham being the Chase and Jarvis Landry being the Jefferson. I'm not saying that the guys are going to end up with the similar careers, but
it's a good comparison, though.
Yeah, Jefferson was really good at getting open underneath. I mean, he caught the ball well. His speed did not show up the same way it did at the combine. His play speed is slower than the 4.4 or 4.3 whatever that he ran at the combine for sure. But he's a good player. He had a lot of games with like 3 or 4 touchdowns, so that certainly helped his stats in college. And Joe Burrow was, on fire with all the talent he had around him. But we'll see.
I kind of go back to fantasy a little bit. I think the one guy on my roster that I'm not like worried about, but definitely slightly concerned with was my Juju Smith-Schuster pick. Obviously, last year the Steelers' quarterback situation was just bizarre. But I don't know, and I'm not an expert in the Steelers. That's kind of, I feel like, more in Jake's department here. How do you guys feel about Juju in terms of fantasy this year? And be honest, because he is my wide receiver too. And I don't know. He's weird. He's a weird receiver to me for some reason.
For me, with Big Ben, he was so much more productive than he was last year with the scrubs he was playing with. However, Antonio Brown was there for most of that. So
yeah,
it's tough to say. I think he does good work out of the slot, and a lot of teams don't have a nickel corner that can cover him the whole game. He'll have some nice games with over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. But then he'll also have some games where he's kind of shut out like he was last year. That's how I see it.
I just got a feeling this is the first season under Mike Tomlin. They're not going to have a winning record.
That's fair.
I think Big Ben is done. You're 38 years old and you had Tommy John surgery. Come on.
With them being in the division, I can't think that way because it'll come back to bite me. But I appreciate it on the outside.
I mean, I guess that's my. Who do you think? I mean, obviously you're very biased here, Jake, and I know you just said you don't want to say anything that might bite back. But I'm assuming the Ravens are the top team in your division. Who is your biggest concern in that division? Like, is it a team like the Steelers, or is it more of a team like the Browns?
I'm not even going to make Jake. I'm not even going to make Jake answer this because I don't want to. I know how it feels for superstition. It's bad juju. So don't set. Yeah, it's bad juju. Literally, pun intended. So I will answer this for him, and then he can just kind of nod his head so he doesn't actually say it. There is no competition in the AFC North. There just isn't. The idea that what happened last year is repeatable for them and that defense and all that, well, guess what happens? That was last year. And the Browns are a hot mess. You don't know what to expect. The Bengals drafted a bust and are putting all their stuff when they should have drafted Chase Young instead and actually had something to build around instead of a quarterback that is overblown and overhyped, and they bought into it and got tricked. There is no competition. These guys, look, if you look at it honestly, Steve, they are just loaded at every position. The Ravens.
Yeah, 100%.
And so how do you, if they want to throw the ball, they've got burners on the outside. If you want to run the ball and control the middle of the field, they've got 2-3 tight ends and running backs that can do it. Their defense is always good. They don't have to be great because the offense does enough so that they're not on the field all the time. You can't say that about any other team in the AFC North. I think it's one of the most lopsided divisions, really, in all of football this year. And I think the Steelers are getting a lot of love off of reputation and not having losing seasons and all that. So,
no, that's fair. I mean, my biggest thing when we started this podcast with, me and Jake and you, my biggest thing is I don't know a lot about the AFC North. So the more that I can kind of poke Jake's brain and your brain a little bit about it too is more beneficial for me. So that was just kind of more of a question of curiosity. Obviously, I don't want to put any bad juju on anybody, except maybe it's in fantasy football. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, that really was just kind of more like, is there a team that even can compete? And you're definitely right. I mean, the Ravens roster is stacked this year, and I think that there's a lot of potential on that team. And we've seen it last year. I think they can definitely replicate similar results. I'm just more curious because I know there's always the hype around the Steelers and their reputation. Cleveland, I don't know what the heck's going on. I didn't even consider Cincinnati in this situation, but just for me, if I can learn anything more about the AFC North each week, that is positive. As a bonus.
And you know now you've gotten me so irritated with you. Now I'm calling you by part of your last name instead of your first. You didn't even catch it.
I got called my entire freshman year of college.
Jake is just back here laughing the whole time, and you're just responding. I'm like, yeah, Steve. Yeah, Steve. And you're like, yeah, yeah. So frustrated with you still.
All love, Jay.
All right, we got to get the hell out of here. We're long in the tooth. You guys got to get your final words.
Go ahead, Steve.
Come on, Scuba Steve.
Yep, I called that in high school too. Look, I think honestly, I am so excited for football that it doesn't even feel like it's here. Like this offseason and everything's been going on with COVID and just the whole thing. Like, are we gonna have football this year? And the fact that it is barely a week away that we're gonna actually have live football, just with everything that's been going on with the pandemic stuff, I'm so excited.
So excited over here too. It's been a long off season. It's been really one of the longer off seasons with all of the uncertainty, and it's really nice to have something to look forward to with some football coming up.
Absolutely.
Yes, and that is the show next week, Wednesday, last show before the season kicks off for these guys on Thursday, September 3rd. The NFL finally gets off and started. I can't wait. It is an exciting time. Thanks for listening to the show. We love you all. Hit these guys up on the Twitter. Sam is at SJSteve9. Jake is at RealJakeVogel. Rams and Bears respectively. I am at UPJ33. Hit up the network on the website, thebrawlnetwork.com. Go there, sign up for free. It's your one-stop shop. The Brawl has it all, baby. And don't forget to give them some love on social media. Hit them up on IG, Twitter, and Facebook by searching Network Brawl. I love you all. We'll see you again tomorrow night. We've got Tim and Brett for the show. Have a good one. Peace out. Much love.
Forever's about to happen right here in this moment of time. So let's draw a line right here in the sand and let it be said that on this very day is the day that we took a stand. Cause not just a game, it's more than a game, it's more than the hurt, it's more than the pain, it's more than the glory, it's more than the fame. This right here is about legacy, man, so it's bigger than me, it's bigger than us. We can lose sight in the midst of the fuss. Let's slow it down and take it in. Enjoy this moment, what's the rush? They wanted that, but we wanted more. This is what we've been waiting for. With tears in our eyes, we let our hearts roar. Unleash war when we walk out this door. We won't be delayed, we won't be denied. In the end, we won't be refused with clear eyes.